Have you given any thought to contributing to the melt? It's easy to do. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. It helps to keep the magic happening here at the Melt. So I encourage you to karmically entangle yourself with the Melt today by subscribing monthly for less than the price of a container of goatee wax, or a prosthetic pinky, or a half stick of DMT butter, or an inflatable casket, or the shrunken head of an Atlantean supermodel, or a woolly mammoth's merkin, or a crystalline replica of Baba Yaga's hut, or a capsule of Sasquatch dander.
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
The UFO alien subject has been taken from many angles. Some think that alien encounters are cloaked military exercises. Some feel that they are from other planets or galaxies and that they have come to assist us in our evolution. Some believe that they are interdimensional and live amongst us on a different but overlapping plane of existence, and some feel that they are the angels that the Bible spoke of, or perhaps the deities that were alluded to in ancient texts. If you care to do just a bit of research, you can find plenty of examples of what seem to be alien beings and their craft depicted in ancient art and various artifacts. Whatever the case may be, there is no denying that there have been throughout history tens of thousands of people who have claimed to have had experiences with alien entities or have witnessed what seem to be alien craft displaying erratic behavior in the sky. Some people have claimed to have been taken aboard these craft and have had various experiences varying anywhere from conversations and tours of the universe to sexual experiences and sometimes traumatic medical procedures. Today's guest, well-known experiencer Chris Bledsoe, has had experiences with UFOs and a variety of alien entities since his initial encounter in 2007. Hunter starts off the conversation by asking Chris where he's located in North Carolina.
I'm in Fayetteville, which is about 60 miles inland by air.
Okay.
But I'm about an hour and a half by car, I guess.
And you live on the same property that you've lived on throughout?
No.
So the other property is somewhere else. Where was that located?
I was next to my mother's home, and we moved 5 years ago. So we're on a 15-acre tract of land with a 4-acre pond, and it's a gate coming in, so it's kind of private. The other place was,
Was it remote?
No, it's not that remote. Where Mother lives, it was more remote than it is here. A lot more, yes. I'm more in town right now, but I'm still filming this stuff. every day about it.
And where did your mother live? What I know North Carolina a little bit. I know like Durham, Raleigh area, Hillsborough. I've been there.
Right. You're on the northern side of Raleigh. I'm on the southern side. I'm 60 miles from Raleigh. Takes me an hour to get there. Straight down 95.
Oh, okay.
Raleigh's you get to 40 and go right for a half hour to get to Raleigh, but I'm right on 95.
Like it.
About an hour or a half hour where 40 is south. So I'm 40 miles from South Carolina line.
So the area where you first had these experiences was kind of a remote area.
Yes. Yeah. It still is. That area has grown up, but it's still kind of remote out there. Yeah. Not my mother's home, but where the river experience was.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's get into that. What were some of the sort of the initial experiences that set everything in motion back in 2007?
Well, let me back up to tell you what set that in all in motion. The most important part about this, and I've discovered this through 15 years of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been 15 years this week, the 7th.
Oh,
or the
wow.
8th. Yeah, January the 8th
Mm-hmm.
of 2007 is when it happened. Elvis Presley's birthday, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But with all that said, in 2005, I sold a business that was a monster. It was a building company, and we were building 100 homes a year and had been for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I got sick with Crohn's disease so bad. I was sick for 17 and a half years. I took medication for it.
Wow.
Well, just before I sold the company, I was in the hospital for in and out a lot. And I was bedridden basically for pretty much a year there, where, that disease is an intestinal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't leave the home without having to come back home. So I was at the lowest point in my life, had to sell my business, and I was losing a lot of money because these people that bought me out were a lot smarter and had more power,
Mm-hmm.
and basically stole $2 million from me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so here I am, 46 years old, not knowing how to start over again. I'm sick, right? I had a near-death experience in 2005 to where I was in the hospital covered up under a sheet head to toe. And I
Mm-hmm.
come up and I saw myself and my wife crying, and doctors walk in the room. And I heard them even talking, knew who the doctor's name was.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's where my life was.
Mm-hmm.
And I recovered from that, but I'm still sick with Crohn's, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the most miserable person, unhappy, still sick, no job. The economy was going south 2007, 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here I am starting over again with the help of my father to build a house on the coast,
Mm-hmm.
an hour and a half away. So we went down in October of 2006, started this project. And by Christmas time, I came home, turned the keys into the house we were renting. I left a group of men there to finish the punch list. Right after Christmas, they had to go back to finish a couple of things to get paid. And so they came back on the 7th that day with all their belongings. They were happy that they didn't have to go back down there driving a lot,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to celebrate. And I didn't have another job lined up. So they were just happy to be home. So they asked me if I'd take them fishing. Well, I'd been in bed all day and felt like doing anything, but Chris Jr. was there. My wife was not at home. She had the other kids and was with her mother. And So I agreed to go fishing with them. I never put a pole in the water, but I took them down there because I had the only 4-wheel drive truck. It's about 3 miles away, but it's a rough drive going. You just imagine a field on your left, driving down a road, and you see this field, and you cross across the field. You drive right across the field on a 2-rut road to the tree line at the back. And at the back of that tree line, the road continues on in the woods and goes down 100 feet to the river bottom. When you get to the river, you turn and parallel it to a little cul-de-sac where people camped out, and skied, and all kinds of things. So the ride down that hill and that turn parallel in the river is real muddy because that black soil, it gets real muddy. And about 2:30, we went there. 3:00, we got there, and I was walking about, watching them, got them set up, and was enjoying watching them, but really wanted to get away. And I did. I walked down in the forest in the back of the cul-de-sac. I went further in instead of the way we came in. I just walked down in the woods about 100 yards and set up beside an oak tree and was just meditating and miserable, right? Crying out to whoever's up there.
Sure.
And so I came back out of the woods about 4:30. It was getting dark. It gets dark at 5:30, but in the forest it gets dark quicker.
Sure.
So I started back out to where they were, and I got there about 4:30, I guess. And I said, "Do you want to stay and fish more or go home?" And they're like, "Well, we're just getting started." I said, "Okay, well, you better get a fire going. It's going to get cold." So we stopped them what they were doing. This is my organization skills, right? That's what I do. So I had them around the whole perimeter of that little acre grass. They gathered logs and sticks, had a big pot, and got a fire going. And it was now 10 after 5. So the sun's about setting. I said, "I'm going to walk up the parallel river and back and make a left and go up the hill to the field. That's where I wanted to go." I told him I was going to just go up to the field and sit and watch for wildlife to come out in the field. And so I walked away at 10 after 5. And when I got to the top of that hill, or before I got to the top of the hill, I was hearing stuff in the woods beside me. This was very important, this part of it, because Chris Jr. encountered what I was hearing. So I walked on up that road and I was listening, and something was tracking me in the woods. And I made it down to where the road turns to the left, which turns west towards the sun. And that road I was going on north was dark. But when I turned to the west, the noise kind of faded in the woods, and I felt this ease because I could see light, not the sun, but I could see the sky light coming down that path. Now I had to go up about 150 feet, maybe 200 feet, and about a good eighth of a mile. And when I got near the top of that hill, a good 40 feet from the top, I began to see the top of what I thought was the sun down the middle of the road, right? I'm looking right down this road. And the higher I walk, and every step I'm taking, I'm watching where I'm stepping because it's muddy going up through there. So I'm kind of walking between the ruts, right, up this little rise in the middle. And I'd jump over or whatever if the mud puddle was big enough. So when I got 40 feet from the top, 35 feet, 30 feet, the higher I walked up, the bigger the sun got and the wider my periphery got. So when I got within 15 feet of the top of that hill, I stopped in just terror because now I'm seeing two suns facing me right down this road. I can't see left or right much, but I'm seeing the tops of these so I would duck down using the hill to thinking I'm hiding, right? And I lift back up and see them. So I kind of moved over to the side of the road and used the shrubs, the bushes on the side, real close to the edge of the road. And I hid in that. And I'm watching these two orbs, and they're about 40 feet around. They're orange. They look like liquid fire, and it's just rotating, both of them. Beautiful. It's like looking at the sun late in the evening when you can see it and it doesn't hurt your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I got scared all of a sudden because I'm a commercial rated pilot and pretty logical guy, right? I've never was into UFOs or none of that kind of thing, but I knew there was something I'm looking at wasn't from here. Not realizing I had been calling on it all day. That's all I've been doing all day, crying out, Lord, or whoever's up there, I need your help. So this is years later of what's going, at that time I was just shell shocked.
Sure.
So I'm hiding from these two big giant balls of fire, and they're on the other side of the road, across the field. The field's 200 yards across to the highway, and they're just above the trees on the other side of the highway, right where we came in. So I looked down the hill thinking, I got to get back to these guys. Got to find my son. I'm freaked out real bad. I'm really, the fear set in. So I'd raised up and I turned my body to run, and I wanted to see if they were still there. And when I raised up, right above me, right up here, plain view, another one appeared, like it just switched on or come out of nowhere, like boom, it was right beside the other two within 1 second. And that's when the chills hit me from head to toe. And I knew they saw me. I knew that there won't no hiding from them. And the next thing I know, I'm running up to the fire, which happened to be 4.5 hours later. And when I got there, they'd been looking at me all night. My son had panicked. He'd walked down in the woods because they knew I had gone in there earlier. And for 3 hours of hunting, they let me go for an hour. Then for 3 hours, they were hunting. They lost Chris Jr. 2 hours into it, because when I got to them, I'm like, you won't believe what I just saw. And they're like, where in the world have you been? I said, what do you mean? I was just up at the hill. He said, no, you hadn't. Look at your truck. They had driven my truck all up and down the highway and left one at the fire while Chris Jr. went in the woods. Look at me. Well, he's lost, and I panicked, and I run to get him. And I'm yelling out in the woods, and he's not answering. So I start going into the forest. It's always thick along the forest edge. Once you get in, it opens up. And I'm pulling this stuff back, and I don't have any flashlight and not prepared. And I hear him, and he comes up from under the bushes and grabs me, and he's in shock. He's like, Daddy, where you been? Why'd you leave me? And he said, these creatures, they've scared me. And so I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. Just take your time.
So by this time, Chris, it's been 4 hours since you've been gone.
4.5, yeah.
And dark, because it's wintertime. So you're basically in the pitch black now, trying to find your son.
Yep.
Yeah.
You must have been terrified.
Yeah, and it's hard to talk about it, but
sure.
Anyhow, I got him settled down, and I drug him to the fire, and the fire's burnt down, the wood's gone, and these guys are freaked out because I'm talking about stuff, and the way Junior was responding. And so about 5 minutes into the conversation, one of the guys shouted, look, and we all looked up, straight up, just where he was pointing, and it looked like the brightest star, Venus, when you see Venus. There were like 9 of them, and it was 8 or 9, but we always had that guess. One guy swears it was, he saw one go up the river.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say there were 9.
Mm-hmm.
So they started going out from one another, almost like they were playful, like children. They went out and they would go around, and all of a sudden, 3 of them came down and landed on the other side of the river, straight in front of us. Scared us bad. And we left fishing poles, everything there, threw it, just jumped in the truck, didn't take coolers or nothing, and started up out of there. And as we were leaving out of there, and what I didn't tell you, I couldn't talk about it, was Chris Jr. What he saw was he was at the back of the cul-de-sac. He's looking down the road, which is 1/8 of a mile, to where it turns left, right? And in the woods, I heard something tracking me. And I'm an experienced, skilled hunter on the Boone and Crockett list for black bear, which I don't do that anymore. So he's looking down this path, and out of the woods on the left, he sees 2 red balls of light cross the path to the riverside. So he's down in the end of the edge of the woods calling out for me. So he sees that, and he runs back to the fire, and he tells them guys, there's some balls of light just went in the woods here. And they're already spooked because they can't find me. So he runs back after a minute, back to where he was, calling for his dad, back at the cul-de-sac. And it's probably 50 yards from where they are or less. And but they couldn't see him because they're down on the little rise that sits right on the water there. It's a steep drop bank. And so he could see, when he went back up there, he sees these 2 balls of light come back out of the woods, back out in the path. That freaks out because they started coming towards him down the road. So he's got a clear shot the way we came in down that path. And so he starts backing up under the shrubbery to hide because he couldn't go back to the fire because the fire's between him and these balls. He'd had to go towards the light to get to the fire.
Right.
So he tries to hide. And when they got within 15, 20 feet of him, he could begin to see there were these glowing little beings about 3 feet tall, had red glowing eyes. So the red eyes made them look like balls of orbs, right? They're translucent looking, but when you get close, and I have pictures of them, you can see them. So that was the thing that had him so upset and all of it, right? So we'll fast forward back to leaving out of there. These things landed on the riverside, the other side of the river. We jumped in the truck and we're going out of there. Well, undoubtedly, these beings were still down there when I went and got Junior, because one of these balls of light starts coming behind the truck. I'm driving up out of there, and there were 3 guys in the back seat was shouting, hurry, hurry. So when we got back to the top of the hill and come up on the flat ground, the field, now these 3 things that were in the sky, 2 of them are still in the exact same spot. And the 3rd one that came down is now on the ground between us and the highway. And so there wasn't no going anywhere. We couldn't go backwards. And we got this thing sitting in the road, and it's about 45, 50 feet long. It looks like a tic-tac or a football, or that's the way I described it.
Silent.
Or, or an egg on its side. And it was just sitting there, and it was glowing extremely bright white. And it had these sparkles that looked like my fingers doing this, like blades of light. I described it as spiky looking. But it was going around it and around it, and there was a house next door. We pulled up to this house, and the people there was home. Their cars were home. They claimed the next day they were home, but we couldn't get them to come to the door. And we drove across the road into their yard and pulled up, and they lived in the back part of that field. And their front door was open. TV was playing. They knocked on the door. I blew the horn. It was 60 by 10 mobile home, or 12 by 60. And they couldn't hear us. The cars were home. So we give up on, nobody had a phone. That's why we stopped. We wanted them to see what's happening.
Right.
We had been sitting there in the truck, couldn't go anywhere. So back out back across the yard, across the ditch, back into our road that we came in on. And we're facing this thing, and we're closer now because I had to drive closer to get to this little house on the right, this mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly we hear 3 shots. And it turns. I don't know who was shooting at it or who was shooting, but we all heard it and reported that. So it turned straight at us and comes towards us and started climbing up as it went over. It was about maybe 40 to 60 feet above my truck when it went over. Blinding. We all were out and looking up through the sunroof at it. And I took off, went home, and dropped them all. This would take a long time to tell that part, but I know we're limited on time. Mm-hmm. But it was a fight to get home. They were actually fighting one another who was going to go home first. We were worried it was the end of the world. We were invading. We were being invaded. I mean, we had 3 on the ground across the river, 3 in front of us, and we're still seeing more above us. And we dropped these guys off, made it home, and Chris Jr. was panicked. He was running through the house, turning all the lights on and locking the doors, even the bathroom doors. Didn't even have a window. He'd locked the door. He was at panic, turned lights on outside. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, after looking through the news and him coming in there finally after he did his thing, locking the house down, I'm like, it's not on the TV. I hadn't seen it anywhere. And suddenly we hear this noise go over the house, and it was kind of a low, sounded like a helicopter, I thought. Mm-hmm. And so I envisioned the helicopter from Bragg going to where we just came from. My house is less than 3 miles by air, 2.5 up the river. And it was heading that way. But suddenly we hear my father's dog kennel, which is next door to us, back in the forest. And it's a real deep piece of property. He had a big kennels. At one time, he had 100 dogs. He averaged about 30, though. Yeah. He raised them and traded them way back. But there was still 15 dogs there about it. And they were all going crazy. We thought, I imagine somebody's breaking in Dad's shop. Mm-hmm. And because he has a big 40-foot garage right next to the dog kennel. And so all this excitement at the river, now I've got somebody I'm thinking is breaking in Dad's garage, because these 15 hound dogs were barking like no tomorrow. And they have a big voice. You can hear a hound dog for a long ways. And they're barking the kind of bark that make your hair stand up. They were scared. Mm-hmm. They were looking at something that was scaring them. And so I'm like, Christopher, I've got to go see who's out there. Somebody's trying to break into Dad's shop, because in my mind, I could see the dogs because they're looking at the garages right there. Mm-hmm. Somebody's trying to get in, and they're seeing them. He protested big time. He didn't want to go. So I just said, I've got to go. We'll use the Rosie. I have a 110-pound Chesapeake Bay Retriever on the back steps, and her hair standing up, and she's barking in the direction of the kennel. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'll send her ahead, son. Don't worry. We'll use no flashlight, and we'll just kind of slip around to see. Rosie will keep them off of us. I wasn't worried about it. I just wanted to see what was happening. Mm-hmm. And so I opened the door. Rosie takes off. Christopher's got me by the shirt, in the back of my shirt. And I'm walking off the patio, Rosie stops about 50 yards or feet out and looks back at me, and she took on off towards the woods. So I kind of trotted real lightly, and it was cold, it's dark. We went down our yard way back, and it was grass way back to the property line, but Dad's wasn't. And there's a path going into this group of woods where his dog kennel was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we turned down this path and walked right up to where the dogs were barking, which I felt like I'd be safe if I was from their location.
Mm-hmm.
I could see back towards the garage. Well, when I got there, they're looking the other way. They're looking in the woods behind the dog kennel.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, oh, this is weird. If somebody was breaking in, they would have come from the road, not from behind the property.
Right.
And so I thought bear, maybe an animal. I know they're scared of bear. A lot of dogs are scared of that scent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rosie's now pointing into the forest, hard as she can, barking, and just hair standing up, just like I'm looking at these dogs in the kennel doing the same. And Christopher's freaked out bad, but at that moment, both of us were kind of really hair standing up. And I'm like, look, I'm going to send Rosie in to the forest. She'll run them wherever, whatever's in there, she'll run them out. So let's run back down the path to our grass.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll run to the back of the property and see if she pushes an animal out across our yard. That's what I thought she would do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we agreed to that. And when we ran, when I bumped her on the rear, I said, get them, Rosie. She takes off into the forest. I take off running. Christopher's got me by the shirt. When we got to the grass, I had to make this left turn, and it was icy. It was frost on the ground. So it kind of slipped a bit, and he pulled away from me. He turned loose in my shirt, and I thought he was still behind me. And I ran right on to where we agreed to go in. This big oak tree, and I ran up to the tree, and I ran up to it hard as I could because I had to run fast to get in front of whatever she's pushing out. And when I run up to the tree, I stopped myself in a pretty hard run and just used my hands and body to absorb the energy from the impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm out of breath, but I'm trying to be quiet. Because the dogs are coming. There's a heightened sense of alertness when this is going on.
Sure.
So this dog's coming towards me, and I'm running, and I run up against this tree, and I'm panting, and I turn around to see if Christopher was coming because I just pulled loose from him, 50 yards back. What happened was he had decided he had all he could stand. So he turned and he went back to the house and went in the back door. While I run on back. But when I hit that tree and stopped, I looked back to see if he was there. And that was probably the most, I would just say there was the same little being that he saw in the river was standing arm's length from me. I could have reached out and touched it. And it was glowing this color of the moon and had a triangle up under his chest right here. And it was just glowing, this translucent glow. And I got my back to it, right? So I turned myself, I got close to the tree. I didn't want to get closer to it. And I turned towards it and I just said, I surrender. I thought it was going to kill me. And I heard this sound, this thunderous voice that said, well, you don't understand. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. About that time, here comes the dog through. So remember, dogs are barking hard as they can and all this noise. And this red, big 100-pound Chesapeake comes right on by me. And this thing's gone. It disappeared in a flash. And she ran on out of hearing. And so I took off back to the house. And that was the first night of January the 8th of 2007. When I got back to the house, Christopher was petrified. And that was the first night. And there's a whole lot more I could spend time on that.
Sure.
But
Had you
I usually
ever
don't get much deeper.
Chris, had you ever had any experiences like this in the woods before? Anything from your childhood that you can look back on and say, maybe that might have been something similar to this?
Yeah. Yeah, I know now things that happened. I didn't know it then, but I knew something was strange because I had a bad habit of getting hurt all the time. And it was never my fault. It was always this thing. And I thought something's trying to kill me. I was shot in the back with a shotgun at 10 years old from 6 feet away, point blank, blew a hole in my back, left shoulder. I've got lead on this side that I can show you through the skin, right up under my heart here. And the only thing I could remember is being inside this bubble or this clear thing that I could touch the walls, but I couldn't see. And I was in space. I could look down and see Earth. That was my memory of 10 years old and getting shot. And that was a very traumatic thing. I mean, for a long time, I suffered from that and trauma. But in Thanksgiving of about 2005, when I was really at my sickest point, it was Thanksgiving. I just gotten out of the hospital, went to my mother's, and it didn't even dawn on us. It was this weirdest, the way everybody accepted it, because the whole family was there at my mother's, and somebody calls and says, y'all need to come out. And we all went outside, and there's where my house is that I just moved out of there now, hovering over that property. This is before the house was there, was this cigar about 400 or 500 foot up in the air. And it was probably, I don't know, it looked as long as 100 yards long, maybe, in the air. And it was glowing green, just lime green. Didn't make a noise. My mother stood there, my dad, all up. And it was just like, we didn't even talk about it when we went back in for Thanksgiving. It was the weirdest thing. But all those kinds of things happen throughout my life. And
interesting.
Today, I film it. I film it every day, just about. I just filmed it tonight.
Wow.
Are you going to post that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put it on Instagram. I have an Instagram account.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all know that, but
definitely. There's some amazing stuff on there. The videos that you post of the orbs.
That's right.
Yeah.
We were talking on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah.
These, what you're going to see that I filmed tonight, and it still has my energy level through the roof, is I filmed orbs. One of them, this big, white, just glowing right beside this garage we had down at the bottom of the hill. And up in the tree was this other one flashing at me. Ground level. It's strange stuff. So I film them in the air, film them on the ground. See them a lot more than I film them.
Sure, I bet. And you said that you have seen faces. You've seen people and even pets, past pets of yours, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of that in still photograph. I mean, really hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos of orbs that have that has people in it, or has a dog, my dog, or children, or strange creatures, things you would think would be a person and a cat crossed. I mean, some strange stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. And is there a prevailing feeling that you have in the presence of the orbs? Is it usually pretty relaxing, or sometimes is it jarring? Or
it's like right now my energy is supercharged from being around it. And it's what gets me emotional. That's one reason I couldn't contain myself tonight, is because of what I experienced tonight out there. When it gets on the ground, that's a whole new level of experience. Not just seeing a light go by in the sky, but I mean appearing.
Sure.
Ground level.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're big as a house when they appear.
Wow.
And I mean, and you'll see it quick. It'll be right in front of you and grow. This orb will appear like the size of your hand, and all of a sudden, poof, it's as big as the end of your house.
Wow.
And it goes out just that quick.
You know how they say, I've heard people say before, God doesn't give you anything in life that you can't handle. Do you think that that's why you've had these experiences, because you're able to handle them?
Probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know why I'm having this, but I know what the general thing that I'm hearing in my conscious mind from my experience with these orbs is they want it known. They want the world to know about it, and that's why they're appearing like they are.
Do you get the feeling that they're from somewhere else, like off planet, or are they more something multidimensional on Earth?
I really don't think, and I have some very smart people. I mean, people that have to talk on a different level when they talk to me, right? They're that smart. Uh-huh. And there's a lot of those kinds of people. And I'm serious. Government scientists, and military people, generals or colonels, they're very smart people. And there are a lot of folks interested in this, and I'm filming this stuff, and they see pretty much everything that I film, and they know it's there. They know it's conscience based. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever you can conceive as consciousness, there's something that created it. It didn't come from nowhere. So you got that to kind of mold into the academic world, and it resets everything we know. So it don't only affect the people, it affects everything, the whole world, in every level. So I think they're all grappling with that right now.
Some of these experiences seem to take place in certain, like they seem to be location based, but this is following you around, right?
Yeah, it follows me everywhere. If I go to California to visit with friends, sorry, I had to have a drink of water.
Yeah.
If I travel to, I've been to San Diego with Tom DeLonge out on the beach and stuff up here, and we've had it fly with other friends. A producer friend flew 200 feet, 300 feet right overhead, two glowing orbs that looked like raindrops, and you could see them through them, translucent. And they were big orange balls out on the ocean. So yeah, anywhere, it doesn't matter. It's the same sky if I'm in California as it is here in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I see the same stars. And
yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Do you think that the I mean, you mentioned the encounter that you had with the cigar-shaped ship in 2005. Do you think things amped up in 2007 because of the traumatic stuff that you were going through? Yeah. You think you summoned that?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I was praying for it. I can tell you this. It's 15 years fast forward, right? 15 years this month. And a lot of study with a lot of smart people, and a lot of contact from outside people that call me or write me. And that there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a lot of people writing me, especially right now with all the stuff I'm putting out there. Mm-hmm. It's like it's nonstop. And it's always, I try to talk to everyone, and it's always the same thing. they tell me their story. They don't tell it publicly, but they feel like they can talk to me, right? So just the average guy. So they call me, and I always ask them, tell me what it was like when you started experiencing this. And it's always the same. I'm struggling with a drug addiction. I'm struggling with my mama died, my son died, my husband died. Death is a big thing, but it happens when they're going through rough times is when it starts, and it does the same for it's trauma, PTSD, trauma based. They're like they care, and they come when they come for the suffering. That's what it's about. Suffering brings them.
Do you still feel fearful when you have these experiences like you did in the beginning?
Not at all. I'm not a bit afraid. I've had more than one friend in the government, one guy in the CIA. I showed him a picture. He said, I would have run or ran. I said, it was funny the way he said it. They can't believe that I stand here. There's no reason to be afraid of it. It's not going to eat me. It wants to talk. I want to talk to it. And we do.
Another big piece of this whole story is an encounter, or maybe you had a series of encounters afterwards, but this first encounter with the entity that you call the lady.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. This is the most pivotal point, and this is it's hard. It was hard for me to tell it, but it wasn't. And I'll explain that. But 5 years from the day it happened in 2007 till 5 years later to Easter of 2012 was the hardest 5 years of my life because of this happening. I mean, I was the lowest person in the world because of schools. We had MUFON sends their people out, and they did a little documentary. Yeah. In 2008, it aired UFOs over Earth, and it got a lot of attention. And it brought the U.S. government was already at my house before that thing, or right when it aired. And that's when NASA showed up, friends from NASA and other places, U.S. Navy, Air Force. People started coming, asking questions, and we were terrified because the UFO world was telling us that the men in black is going to get you, the government will shoot you, kill you. We were hearing this from the UFO world, right? Which is who we reached out to when I reported it. And 15 years later, I'll tell you how they were totally wrong. My experience with government people are friendly, and it's always given us this vindication thing. They come to us and we just don't look that way. They don't know. We'll keep focused this way. And thank you for that. So we kind of felt warmed by the interaction with these scientists and stuff, right? And I walked away from the UFO world for the most part. But those 5 years brought horror because people were cruel. People at school were picking on my children, and the teachers were, and calling their dad crazy. And for 5 years there, it was terrible. And I felt responsible, and my kids were being punished and outside and things from groups. And long story short, 3:00 in the morning on Easter morning, that night anyhow, I hear this voice, thunderous, manly voice, like it came from the earth, and it's like arise, and it shook me to the core. And I jumped up in the dark, sat up straight in the bed, and I said, I heard that. I know you're here. And I looked straight at the clock and it said 3.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I remember, I am completely dressed, and I was just in my, night clothes to sleep. And I'm now dressed with shoes and pants and shirt, and I'm out the back door.
Mm.
And I just don't know how they did that, but I'm in the forest back at the dog kennel where it all took place with Chris Jr., where I just talked earlier about, right? And I'm standing here, and there are these 3 shadowy beings in front of me, and they hand me this object, and it felt like a 5-pound thing of hamburger. That's what it felt like. The sausage type, with
Sure.
the middle twist on each end. It was shaped just like that, about that size, but it was furry and prickly to my hands, and I couldn't see because it was dark very well. And these beings were just like glowing, translucent beings. And when they handed it to me, I dropped it on the ground because it irritated my hands. And I heard this voice said, "No, pick it up. You must keep this." So when I picked it up, I didn't know what to do with it, but I didn't want to hold on to it. So I opened the dog kennel and threw it in. And the minute I did this, now all this is bizarre sounding, but I'm telling you, this went clear to, it got the attention of people at the Vatican, let's just say, because of the details I've given on this and the things that's happened today. What's happening today was because she came, I tell you. Because this wind comes out of the forest the minute I shut that door, and it was a blast of air. And I see this translucent bull come through the darkness out of this hole and ran me over. Translucent. I saw it go over me and I could see through it. I hit the ground on my back, rolled to my stomach. And when I did, there's this beautiful lady floating 3 feet off the ground, about 6 to 8 feet from me. I couldn't reach out and touch her, but I'm on my knees because I landed on my back, flat, straight on my back. I rolled to my stomach, and I started to get up and run because I didn't know where this thing had went. I thought it was a cow, bull. And the minute I got to my knees, here's this beautiful woman that was glowing, this like the ground was illuminated around her, and her dress was this pearlescence, silky looking white that went to the ground and out to her hands. Now I was raised a Baptist guy, right? So I don't know anything about any of this. I was never schooled on this, but so this lady is there, and she's beautiful, and she said, "You know why I'm here?" And the reason she said that was because for those 5 years, I had the biggest desire to prove everybody wrong, that I was consumed with it. I stood outside every night of my life staring at the sky and trying to deal with the punishment the community was giving my family, right?
Sure.
So she came and she said, "You know why I'm here?" Because I had given up at that point and said, "I'm not going to ever talk about this subject again." I had made that vow after I stood out for 5 years, and I'd see them and my family would see them. But I stood, 25 nights and never see nothing. And then all of a sudden I'd see something quickly, but I could never film it. Could never film it, could never prove it to nobody. And was getting, hosed by everyone, family, cousins, my dad, my mother, all of them were thinking I was dealing with demonic entities, all kinds of things, because they're in the church community, right?
Right.
My wife still deals with that with her friend. So she told me, she said, I had given up to never tell it again, to never talk about it. I just vowed that looking up at the sky. And that was on December, I think. It was like in December, just before Christmas, when I'd given up on it. And on Easter that night, she came. She said, if you will promise to help me, I will promise to help you. I will protect you. But you must know I'll be here to help you. And I'll provide the way. But I'll allow you with camera and with witness to help tell this. So immediately in 2012, I started getting pictures and videos. And today I just downloaded, I don't know, 120 more videos off of my camera.
Wow.
120. I got 10 tonight, 13 last night, 21 the night before. And I just walk out for an hour and here they come. They're in the woods, they're in the air. And so, you know, that's what it's hard for people to grapple with. This is a reality now. I'm able to share this. And she told me I would be able to. And when I came out on Richard Dolan's, if you'll listen in 2019, I was silent from back then. I never went public. I was silent all the way to 2019. Did no interviews, 1 or 2, maybe 5 in 10 years, 8 years. And 2019, it was the night after, I tell you what it was. It was Easter weekend. And I'm sorry, I got a dry fire going in this fireplace and it drives me out.
No problem.
So it was Easter of 2019. Every year at Easter, something major happens, big for me. Maybe my mother-in-law or my wife's sister and her family's here, and Orbs start appearing around. In the daytime when my son was married this year, I walked out and said, bless them, bless this union, and appearing all of a sudden in front of 30 people, 27 people in the broad daylight. Here comes an orb, flew right over the wedding.
Wow.
So, yeah, this is the kind of interaction that's happening. And so I got sidetracked there.
You were talking about the lady.
Yes.
And your interaction with the lady that first time.
Your first encounter.
Well, that was really the main encounter. She told me that she said, you know why I'm here? Because I vowed that I would never tell it again. And that's not what they wanted. These beings, all this activity that was happening, this orbs appearing, was constantly in my face and in my wife and my children. See, they're experiencing this in those first 5 years with me. And the people are punishing their dad, but they felt bad because they were seeing it too, right? So it isolated us. And we had no help. We called UFO World. They were like, oh, the government's going to kill you. Well, I got government all around me. So it was traumatic for my children, really bad. Ryan talks about it on his podcast. My youngest son.
It sounds like there has been a healing element, that your Crohn's disease was cleared and that you have now had the ability to transmute this energy and actually heal others. Can you talk about that? That's so interesting to me.
I honestly believe all it takes is something from somebody, like a way for them. I call on them, these heavenly beings, to do this, to help people. And sometimes I get people that are very sick that gets miraculously better all of a sudden. because I asked them to send me a little token of some sort, which has a part of them there, maybe a clipping of hair. That'll do it. And it's like they can find your DNA. They can wirelessly change anything. They can do it just from so easily. That's my whole idea about this. And there's people that's verifying what I'm saying. There's a scientist, Bruce Fenton. You can ask him. He had a person he knew in Australia was sick and had ovarian cancer, I believe it was, and she was terminal. And he reached out to me, and I said, tell her to send me a shirt and some cotton and a clipping of hair. Now, this came to me. I didn't create this. This is just, I hear it. Like, so they send us a little package, and it took a while to get here, about 4, 5, 6 weeks, because it comes from Australia, right? And so I got this, and I opened the package, put my hand on it, and said a little prayer, laid it to the side. And in about 30 days, Bruce reaches out, Daniela, his wife, and said that the person that was sick, she actually sent her notes to me, but she had gone to the doctor, and the doctors told her that when they went in to do surgery to remove these tumors, they were gone, and that she was not terminal, and walked out of the hospital thinking she was going to die. And the doctor said, how did this happen? She said, I don't know. Some guy in America, I sent him a shirt. And this is documented, Chris.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing.
Ask me how. I don't know. I just know there's so much more that we don't know. Sure. That we need to figure out, but we got to get together on this as the scientists have got to start accepting this and kind of combine spiritual science, spirit and science together, I think, to ever get anywhere. That is this conscience-based.
Yeah, we speak of consciousness, definitely, but a lot of this rings like it's like it's more heart energy, it's more emotion, it's more intuition, rather than coming through the intellect. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It is emotion-based. Low vibrations or sadness. Sadness is a big thing, and it takes a pretty low point to get that, where they come. There's a lot of documented cases of this ball of light appears and my dog was saved or my daughter was saved in the hospital. So all of it's true. And I think what I'm filming in the sky is on the ground because I get these orbs. I see them come out of the sky. I didn't tell this yet, but on 2019 of Easter of 2019, I'm gonna go back to that. I knew something was going to happen. Saturday night, nothing happens. Sunday night, nothing happened. I didn't even see anything. I'm like, this is strange. So Easter's over and it's Monday. Sunday was Easter, right? And it's Easter Monday. Monday afternoon, I was kind of sad that I didn't see what reminds me of the lady when these orbs come on Easter. It's her to me. It's her messenger or whatever. And so I walk out the back door and our little cabin is less than 8 feet from the water. It's that close, maybe 6 feet. And I can fish off my back porch, right? So I open the back door and I look straight up. And I had to because the orb started flashing at me. It was sitting there. And when I opened that door, it started flashing erratically. I'm like, oh, Lord. And I just froze. And immediately it starts spiraling straight down out of the sky and came through the top of the pine tree on the other side of the lake, right? Spirals through the tree to the ground and stops. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just dropped to my knees right where I was. And I'm 3 feet from the water's edge, right? My dog is right beside me. And I'm getting this energy is building right now. So,
Sure.
long story short, this thing's jumping up and down, this orb, and it's flashing like some that I'm going to post tonight. Brilliant white flash and red and yellow. And as it's moving up and down, all of a sudden it starts from sitting there, it starts coming towards me across the pond. And that's when I went praying, Lord, I'm sitting here. I'm not leaving. Give me the strength to sit here. And I did. I pulled my camera out, my phone, and I put it up there. I found video while I'm terrified, praying while I'm pulling my phone out, right? And this thing is 25 feet from me. And it's jumping up and down 8 or 10 feet in the air, flashing red, yellow, white in the middle of the pond. And I found video. I thought I hit record, but I didn't. And this thing's flashing at me, right? And I don't know how long it was that I'm sitting here terrified, but not. I wasn't scared, but I was nervous, let's just say, because it's putting on the show.
Yeah.
And what I could see, what I've seen before, I knew what it was. These entities, they're beings. And this being is translucent and 8 or 9 feet, maybe 10 feet tall. And it's standing over the water on my pond, and the orbs inside the entity going up and down. When the orb comes at you, when it flashes, they'll do that. Out of that orb comes these beings. I filmed them, and I'll share videos with you, showing them coming out of the orb. White, tall, 8-foot white, tall being of light. I have it on video. So about a few minutes into me sitting here watching this, I looked up and I thought, Lord, I didn't hit record. And so I hit record. And the minute I did, the orb went out. And I caught my breath like that. And I thought, darn. And all of a sudden, it flashed at me. I thought, okay, so I'll keep filming. And so I filmed for almost 18 more minutes, 17 minutes and 50-some seconds of this orb sitting in the middle of the pond flashing at me. And it flashed at me for 18 minutes. But what it said was, and it stayed there for probably a half an hour the whole time, because I got 18 minutes on record, right? And at one point, I walked out on my pier and got closer to it, within 10 feet of it. And that really made it dim down a bit more because of the energy this thing puts out. But it told me, and I heard it, but it didn't magnify to me until the next weekend. But it all came together by the next Saturday. This was Monday night. That next weekend, my son had a fishing trip organized for the Outer Banks, Cape Lookout. Furthest eastern point in North Carolina, sticks way out in the coast. So we're way out there on Saturday night, and I was real sick then, really sick. Still am with rheumatoid arthritis. And so my energy levels was like 0 at that time on chemotherapy. And so we fished. I rode on the boat with him and was just with my son and his buddy. And came into the house, and I went in to take a nap while they were cleaning the boat and cleaning the fish. So I wake up, it's dark, right? They're out in the backyard, these 3 or 4 guys, my son and his buddies, and they got the barbecue grill going, and they're cleaning fish, and they're getting ready to cut. And I woke up from the snap, and I opened the back door. And when I did, the very second I did, this orb, fiery red orb from out a couple, I don't know how far out it was, but it was a long ways out. And within a second, it rushed right up to us to about 300 feet, 400 feet, and stopped. Boom. Just that quick. I whipped my cell phone out and I started filming it. and it sat there and it pulsated. It turned from red to green to orange, and I got a good 3 or 4 minutes of it, and then it sped off back the other way. And so that hit me like a brick. After that, it all come out to an understanding to where I have to start now telling this story.
Right.
And what it said this, it said, we're going to help you with witness and with photograph and with video to tell this story, to tell the story of them.
Right.
In other words, they want me to present them for disclosure. They want the truth out, and they told me there was going to be trouble. In 2019, I did 10 interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't done any since, and other than these little podcasts.
Right.
I shouldn't say little, but they're not like going to
Sure.
Alien Con out in San Francisco.
Sure.
But I did 10 of those, and Richard Dolan, all those episodes, to get the word out. And I told it in all of them, or pretty much all, that 2020 was bringing trouble. There was going to be severe trouble, and just to lock your doors. I said it on Jimmy Church, to lock your doors. You ain't seen nothing yet. And that's when COVID hit. It hit within January, February of 2020, right? And then I started filming at a rate that is just magnifying. It's going exponentially. So I could probably do 100 videos a month.
I do want to touch, I want to circle back to the lady and this object that you threw into the kennel. Did you ever see that object again?
I never did. And honestly, what happened to me after her, it's another thing of missing time. I woke up at the back door, fully dressed, just inside the back door on the floor. I don't know how I got there.
And what was the Vatican's interest in that object?
Well, it was not just the object. That was something that was explained to me. That was what it actually meant was it had no legs or no head or no tail, but it was alive. It was a living being representing humans that had no direction. The humanity has no direction. We're going to change that direction by telling this truth. And that's what they want out there. They want the truth to the world, that people deserve it. And that's the message from her.
And
that's why I'm getting all this stuff. You know?
It's interesting, Chris, because the Vatican has come out in support of these experiences. They have talked about alien life or otherworldly life, and that's something that is brand new. Do you feel that vindicates you in some way?
Well, yeah, I feel vindicated, pretty much 100%, because, or at least in my area at home, around the people I'm around, they don't look at me anymore. I used to where I couldn't look at them, they shunned me. Business people, church people. I was building 100 homes a year. Remember, that was $15 to $18 million a year in revenue. And bankers and lawyers and friends all looked at me like I was nuts and treated me like that. And now they're all friends again. And a lot of them have come and shook my hand. Even the newspaper vindicated me. When the U.S. government announced it, the paper did a story vindicating us.
It's interesting that Hollywood seems to approach the whole UFO mythos with this fear base, that it's something we should be afraid of. Have you ever been approached by anyone in Hollywood to tell your story?
Yeah, quite a few, but I always hung on. I've never been in a hurry to tell it because it's not ended. And if I can't have the confidence that it's not going to be told negative or changed. I didn't want anything to do with it because it's not about money. I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
money brings sadness to a lot of people, brings problems.
Right.
I've found what I like most in life, and that's my family, my children, my grandchild, and helping others, There's so much gratitude from the people writing me every day saying, "You changed my life. Thank you. I was lost. I'm changed. I was afraid because I was seeing this. Now I'm not afraid. My whole life has changed directions." So it's all about our own reality. We create our own reality. This is an illusion that we're in. Pretty sure we're in an illusion.
Like a dream.
Like a video game.
Yeah.
Video game. Same thing.
Yeah.
I think when you're dreaming, you're probably in another realm, another world where you're really there.
For
But
sure.
Think about it. You spend half the time in the dark and half the time in the light.
I think that's part of the
Yin
trick.
and yang.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of the trick of this existence too, is sort of the trick thinking that all that there is these little meat suits that we wear, and
Right.
we don't really have any effect on the world or reality or anything like that, when in truth I think we have a great effect.
It's a trick to the soul. This is about the journey of the soul, progressing and learning and going back to the source, the creator. God. This got to be, because our bodies, and I was shown this in a big science group that's classified, but at that time, but it was about our DNA is like a living computer, and it's connected to something out, because our hair is our receptor, your skeleton is the antenna. Your hair stands up. They're sensing something you don't realize.
Yes.
That's why Native Americans never cut their hair, because they had this. Even the military knew this. They had these wind talkers and stuff that could psychic, but the body is transmitting a frequency out into space somewhere, probably right around us, on a 156 megahertz frequency, which is in the radar band, which means it's pinging. When it goes out, it hits something and it comes back. So there's information going out of each individual person's body is talking to the ether or the computer. This is the way I tried to tell NASA friends. It's like a big giant computer that's alive, that's talking to every individual. And it's not only talking to you, it's talking to each cell in your body. Because those cells there's millions of them, and they're all different, and they all have their own program, and they all do their own thing. This one don't tell that one what to do, nor does that one. They all are talking to one source that's giving them the information. So even the plants and the trees, the animals, that's what it's about. Nature, forces of nature.
Well, maybe
Chris, Egypt made their gods into animals and birds.
Maybe that's how they're communicating with you without what we would consider traditional language, that your cells are responding. You are the receiver of this information. So it's like your dial is tuned in to their frequency.
Right. But they're actually coming. They're allowing me to film them and show it to you.
Right.
And that's only by them. And everybody that studies this knows that you don't get a video or a photo unless they want you to.
Exactly. I've heard that before. And that's why some people have these experiences and some people don't.
Right. I don't know why that is, but I know it happens, why somebody has them and why somebody don't. But the governments or scientists or scholars, all of them are dabbling the idea of wrestling with, why you? I had a guy at NASA say, why you? I said, what do you mean, why me? He said, why you? I've never seen this react around anybody like it does you. Why'd they pick you? I said, I don't know. Why not? They got to pick somebody.
Sure.
I don't know why. I have no clue. A lot of people believe it's in the bloodline that came through DNA, or it was prophesied or something. I mean,
interesting.
My friend, and I'll not use any names, but I have a friend in the academic world, a very popular lady, and she was telling me about Saint Galgano of Tuscany, and he's the real researcher. He's the real Merlin, the sorcerer in the stone. And then there's really a stone in a rock in Tuscany. Saint Galgano was a knight that the legend of Merlin came from, they think. But he was supposedly a valiant knight, and he was tired of bloodshed. And his heart was crying out, and he had an angel appear. He said it was Archangel Michael appeared in front of him, a lot like this orb that happened to me on the pond.
Right.
And it told him, I don't really know the story in depth, but I know it made him into a laughing stock around everybody. It put his sword in a stone and said, I'll never kill anyone else. And the sword is still in that stone today. And easy to Google it and the whole story. But long story short, there was a prophecy made by King Henry VII, which was the first Scottish king, Tudor. And King Henry VII, my family is direct descendants of, or we're descended from him. His mother was born in Bledsoe Castle in England.
Wow.
Which is 20 miles north of London. And there's a castle there to this day. And that's where King Henry VII came from. And so he actually had a prophecy. He researched madly how if he was kin to Merlin or this Saint Galgano. Long story short, there was a prophecy that his bloodline would fulfill the prophecy of Merlin. This is coming from me, from scholars.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chris interviewed Diana Pasulka a couple of years ago. How did you connect with her?
That's who told me that.
We love her.
I was going to say, I thought that might be who you were talking about.
We really love her. She's amazing.
Yeah. And you introduced her to Tyler, right?
Yeah, I sure did.
That's mind blowing.
He was one of the NASA guys that were hanging out in the early days at home, and my kids were terrified. And he was the one that looked at me and said, "Why you? Why you?" I'm like, "What do you mean, why me?" My whole family was there when he said that. But I introduced them to, and she got to do and see a lot of interesting stuff. And I got to do a little science work with those guys, studying things. And
fantastic.
Don't know how much it helped, but I had an enjoyable time doing it, and it was a learning process. And I've learned so much since then. It's crazy. But
yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've had good experiences with the government. Like they have. Do you feel like they're following your story and kind of keeping track of you and maybe observing what you're observing?
I had one just text me a minute ago. It come across my screen, says, "How did it go?" I'm just talking about this podcast right here. So you wonder how much they keep us 7 days a week.
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it's all enjoyable friends. I mean, we chat and talk, and we do experiments and stuff together.
That's good to hear.
It's really fun. I mean, I don't feel threatened.
Well, quickly going back, I know we're kind of approaching an hour and a half here, but going back to them sort of giving you permission to document them and actually encouraging you to, do you think, is that for the reason of just spreading the idea that there are these beings that exist and this is what they do and this is how they communicate? Or are there messages that they have wanted you to pass along?
Yeah, the biggest message though is it's a pretty big message I'm laying out here. It's conscience based. I believe they're angels, not aliens.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen an alien that I can imagine. They've always been angelic beings. They came, I was sick when they showed up at my house, when that little one said, "I'm here to help you, not hurt you." The next day, I didn't take any medication for Crohn's, which I'd taken 17 and a half years. And I never taken another pill since and never had one symptom since. So from that day forward, nobody could ever tell me that a Pleiadian from some planet out there came because he heard me crying out to a heaven, to a God figure. That's what I was looking for. I won't call him an alien. Would you please come help me? I'm sick.
Sure.
I feel like dying. I was crying out, and they came in balls of fire. And so, however anybody wants to interpret that is their own way. But my way was it had sympathy. Whatever it is, it cared. And it cares for other people, because they all call me and say I was at the bottom of my barrel when it started. I lost a husband or a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's emotion-based sympathy, suffering, but there's so much we don't know. Can't wrap our heads around it, right?
For sure.
So I'm helping these people study it, and I'm enjoying doing it and letting them glean whatever they can from it and make their own minds up. But I just know what it's telling me and why it's coming, and pretty much proving that part without a doubt.
Well, it's interesting that there was this prophetic element that prophesized COVID and this kind of pivotal shift in our history, just in terms of people's medical health and their mental health. Do you feel like there's a end to that, and that we will maybe get to some other side? You mentioned in another podcast, I heard you talk about 2026 as being a time of maybe one could say enlightenment.
Awakening, yeah. And I pretty much found out that the government's been on track for that time frame for a long time, and didn't know it. But this is, I think it's going to happen. I think it could unfold in a way that we can't conceive. Wonder why whole civilizations are no longer here. What happened to them? Where'd they go? Was it a disaster, or was it something different? Did they figure it out? Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot to be tuned into right now. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Once they tell it, and they're going to, it's going to change everything. Change the history books, the record books, the academic writings. It's got to change it all, because the science world's up on end, how they deal with it. And a lot of scientists are right out atheists. They don't believe in anything.
Yeah.
Lights out, just lights out.
Yeah.
So those are the worst ones to deal with. It's not the average people. I think it's more in that world. People grappling with it, and they're the ones just probably not wanting it to happen.
Right. So when you say they tell it, who are you talking about?
They being
the beings when they reveal themselves more.
I don't know. I don't quite understand what angle you come from there. We were when I say they the beings, yeah. Well, they're celestial beings or angelic beings. I don't know is it technology, what it is, but
Mhm.
they can shine a light at you. And that's where the information comes from.
Mm.
You ever seen the thing on Men in Black with the little flipper where they
Yep.
can
Yeah.
blast you with it and you
Uh-huh.
forget? Well, that ain't too far-fetched.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you it's not. And yeah, information comes through light. And it can come to all of us. You ever see a star flash in the sky? You see a flash of light once in a while. That's them waving or sending you information when they do it. Don't everybody see it. It'll be time just for you. But as part of that, whatever we're sending information to out of our source, those are the keepers, the watchers. They're watching us. They're watching us evolve. And suffering through COVID has been phenomenal. And they don't like that.
Mm.
That's why they're showing up like they are.
Mm.
This is part of the reasons, the information. I'm not the best with words, but I can tell you this. It's a lot of suffering happening
Yes.
around the world. Fear.
Sure. Yes.
And this is why they're coming. That's why they're pushing for disclosure. And I don't think the government can hide it any longer. They know they can't.
Mm-hmm.
They
Right.
got to tell it, and just how, they're not sure. But it's coming.
Yeah. And there were
What
some.
does it all mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There seems to be some factions of the government. Maybe it's not the government. Maybe it's intelligence organizations. I don't know, who seem to kind of want to spin this, and you alluded to it earlier, Hunter, as this is going to be some alien invasion, or these are malevolent entities and they're here to probe and experiment on us and stuff like that. But your experience doesn't speak the least to any of that. What do you
Mine
think?
doesn't.
Yeah.
But there's multifaceted things going on. Oh,
Sure.
I haven't moved my phone there. There could be that happen.
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't. There's a lot of people seeing things.
Mm.
Just because I haven't seen an alien doesn't mean it don't exist.
Sure.
What I've seen, I can't describe as an alien. It was a glowing white being of light. That don't look like a yellow or gray or green skinned
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
alien. It looks like a ghost, or it can look like you. It can turn itself right on into our world and become your mother and support you when you're on down. The stranger comes into your life and just gives you comfort. That's who I'm talking about. That's what's up here flying around in these orbs, and they can mimic anything. They can look like a flying saucer. They can look like a sailboat in the sky. They can look like a triangle, any of that.
That's a good point, because a lot of what I was just talking about is usually attributed to alien gray sort of interactions and encounters. And what you seem to be talking about doesn't have anything to do with that.
That's not my experience.
Yeah.
That's not where I'm coming from. And I don't want to discount anybody that's having those kinds of experiences. If they claim it's negative, well, that's yin and yang, light and dark, good and bad.
Right.
And,
Sure.
you need to, is it an alien or is it a negative entity?
Sure.
Demonic force.
Right.
And that's more likely what's happening. But is there still aliens from some planet? Could be.
But it sounds like your experience is really based on who you are as a man and as a human, is that you aren't a negative person. So the experiences that you are having are reflective. They're reflecting back who you are as a person, because you needed healing. And so you were given the ability to heal yourself and others. So I think that really speaks to who you are as a human.
Well, thank you for that. Because they healed me, because they came when I was crying out, I have been more than reverent or humbled by that happening, and they never left because that was the reaction I gave. I was extremely thankful and grateful. And when I go out like tonight, I'm like, I can't get enough of you. Thank you for helping my family. Thank you. My whole family had COVID, my wife and children. I'm in this little 800-foot cabin at Christmas with them, and I didn't get it. And me with an autoimmune disease. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
amazing.
I don't know why, but I feel blessed, and I just give thanks. And a lot of times I go out and give thanks, and the sky just lights up. Here they come. Sometimes 35 orbs come. I'm not joking.
Wow.
I filmed a lot of them like that. Filmed 8 at one time recently.
That's
Amazing.
incredible.
8, yeah.
Well, I'm ready to be healed, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
I am.
What's your P.O. box? We've got stuff to say.
Exactly. I got a box for you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to set up a P.O. box actually to keep my address private, really, because I do have a lot of folks that send me stuff, and
yeah, I'm sure.
I don't have the time and the money to send it back, but
Yeah.
I do keep it. I don't get rid of anything, and it's all presented up as a need, and if it be their will to help, then they help, and that's all I can say. That's how it works, and I give them the thanks for it all. So when I said I was happy and I don't need a yacht, I don't need a lake house and a mountain house, all that's a waste of a person's time because they got to deal with it all. I don't have to deal with anything, and just enjoy my family and my experience with the heavenly beings out there.
And that's probably the greatest gift that they've given you, is that peace of mind.
Yes. Vindication after 15 years, and who would have known all the struggle would turn out to be such a blessing. But it has been. And it's not only blessed me, it's blessed my whole family. All my kids have been blessed beyond. I mean, things just, after about a certain number of years, it just, boom. That was in 2019 when the angel or this being came and hovered over my phone and told me to tell the world. And I did. 10 drastic interviews. Boom, 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 right in a row. All in 6 months. And flew out to San Francisco in a wheelchair.
Wow.
When I went out there. Yes. And at that point, our grandson that year was conceived. We have another grandson that's handicapped in a wheelchair, and there for a while he could feel his toes. That was an amazing thing.
Wow.
Give us hope, right?
Yeah.
And everybody got these fantastic jobs all in 3 months' time. All 4 of my kids, bam, they just got a new company, a new job, a new marriage, and everything just blossomed and bloomed. And so it's blessings.
That's incredible.
And it all happened after 2019.
Well, it has been an absolute honor to speak to you. And I feel so grateful that you are willing to share your story. And this is definitely a safe place to do it, because Chris and I have no judgment. And I truly believe that you experienced what you experienced. And I just thank you so much for being so candid and able to share this with us. We really appreciate you and wish you all the health and happiness that your family wants and needs.
And we would love to have you on again if you would be up for it.
Well, I'd be glad to. I'm not doing a whole lot now, just kind of hiding from COVID. So until February or March, I guess I'm going to stick near my little workshop right here.
Sure. Well, we'll line something up here in the near future, and because I've got a lot more to ask and dig into. So it's been a delight, Chris. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it, and am honored to have you on.
Yeah, same here, Chris. I appreciate it. And it was Amanda
Hunter.
Hunter, right? I'm sorry, Hunter.
No, it's okay.
You're a hunter.
I have
You
the
shouldn't.
worst. I have the worst trouble with names.
Oh yeah.
It's one of my curses all my life is I forget names. And I should have known Hunter because I have a first cousin. His name is Hunter.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I'll remember now. For sure.
Well, have a good rest of your night there in isolation, and we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know when this goes live.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Chris.
All right. Thank
All right,
you.
bye.
I'm still buzzed from that conversation. That was absolutely amazing. I was tearing up a few times during that. It was just, he has such intensely deep and emotional experiences, and I don't know. To bring up that I don't doubt him seems silly in the face of having just had a conversation with him. I think there's no doubt at all that he's had the experiences that he's had, and it's no mistake that all of these government officials and intelligence agencies and scientists and stuff like that are kind of leaning into him, seeing what he's up to, because he's definitely connected to something really powerful.
Well, in my experience, the powers that be, academics, NASA, the CIA, FBI, these folks have a lot of things to do. They're not going to go and hunt someone down or spend a lot of time on someone who isn't having experiences. Mm-hmm. They've got bigger fish to fry and better things to do with their time than travel to North Carolina to talk to someone or to observe someone who hasn't had these experiences. So in many ways, that is kind of the thing that solidifies his journey, and it kind of galvanizes these events. I think it's really fascinating that he's had so many varying events happen to him, but then when he's kind of looking back, he's able to connect things that did happen in his childhood, which is kind of a common thread for people who have had experiences that would be considered maybe otherworldly, is that those things do start either generationally or they start when you're young.
Yeah, that's one of the major things I wanted to ask him is why did it start when it did? I mean, I think it's an obvious fragment of that answer would obviously be the trauma that he was going through and the intense low place he was in his life that probably definitely set it off. But I'd never heard him allude to the 2005 sighting of that cigar-shaped craft above their house before. So that's interesting. And then he was talking about his childhood too, which I've never heard him allude to.
No, when he was 10 years old and he was shot in the back, mm-hmm. and he was in an orb that he felt that he could touch either side of it. So you're talking about a physically traumatic event that happened, and again, something intervened in that. I like that there's this element of him that is based in religion and is based in his spirituality, and he doesn't see these as being malevolent forces that are engaging with him. He sees this as something that is coming from what some might call a higher power or a higher frequency or a higher energy. And so that really is fascinating to me, because it's easy to kind of lump this in the UFO box and say, well, this is a UFO experience. Well, in his opinion and in his mind, it's not a UFO experience. This is something else.
And it does relate to, it's interesting that Diana Pasulka is a part of it too, because she got on the UFO tip by studying references to this in Catholicism. And if you look at a lot of those old paintings, you can see totally like airships and crafts and stuff in the background and things coming down from them.
And orbs.
And orbs. But it's interesting too, later on this week, we're going to be talking to Ryan Musgrave Evans, who talks about cryptoterrestrials. And a lot of this phenomenon sort of sounds very similar to that. The glowing eyes, the orbs, the lights, the kinds of lights, the effects that these things have on people are very much like the bull, the invisible bull running over him, are very much like what Ryan talks about. And it'll be interesting to go into that with him too. But yeah, it is interesting that he comes from that background. I think that some people simplistically think that he just thinks that it's all biblical stuff, but I didn't get that impression at all. I think that he just can add that spiritual layer to other things, and he still doesn't know exactly what they are, but it reminds him and smacks of the kinds of things that they talk about in the Bible and angelic encounters and stuff like that. But who knows what angelic encounters are? Who knows what angels are? Who knows what any of that? There may be all the exact same thing.
Well, he mentioned that his wife has experienced some castigation and some vilification in their church, and that's been an issue even recently. So I think that, the kind of the myopic perspective, if you're coming from especially a hyper-conservative Baptist background, which is what my family's background is on my mother's side, is that you're immediately going to go to some demonic kind of ideology that, this is coming from a negative, nefarious source, when maybe not. Maybe it's the opposite of that. And the reason I would say it's the opposite of that is because of the influence and the effect that these things have had on him. This hasn't had a negative or a detrimental effect on his physical person. It was the outside world that was reacting negatively out of ignorance. So I think that's an important thing, is that he didn't fall into some drug addiction or fall into, a habituation of bad behavior after these experiences. This actually lifted him up. So that's what leads me to believe that there is some spiritual element, some like higher frequency spiritual element there that he is tapping into.
I think a lot of people have negative experiences in these kinds of situations too, because they freak out. They may have a fire and brimstone version of religion, and they use that template and put it on top of the situation, or they it's just simply something out of the ordinary, out of the unknown,
right.
And it might be so awe-inspiring that fear is the only thing that they take away from it. Well,
and also the Hollywood narrative that we're fed is that it's anal probes, it's aliens kidnapping you, that any kind of a thing that you don't have a template for is going to be a negative experience. Yeah. It's very rarely something that enlightens you or heightens you. That's not the thing that sells movie tickets. They want to scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, I got taken into this craft, and then, probing and, impregnation and all these things. And that's scary stuff, so I think he's just approaching it from, many experiences that he has had that just reinforce that this is not something to be fearful of.
Yeah. along the Stephen Greer line, sort of. All right. Well, we will definitely be talking to Chris again. I can guarantee that if I have anything to do with it, and I do have tons to do with it. So that's going to happen for sure. There's so many more things to ask that interview just did not do it justice, but it was a lot more, explored a lot more territory than I thought it would. So I'm very, very happy with it. Hopefully, any of you listening gleaned something positive from it. I think Chris is a very humble guy, and there's just really no way to misinterpret it any other way. He's very straightforward, very kind. I can tell by speaking with him that he's just a very decent, good-hearted person. So yeah, the more we can interact with him, the better.
And check out his Instagram page if you are on Instagram. And if you listeners have had any experiences, we would love to hear them. So please feel free to reach out to myself or to Chris. You can reach me at hunter-muse@protonmail.com.
And the Melt podcast at protonmail.com. I was just looking up. Chris is on Instagram under Christopher Lentz, Lentz Bledsoe, Bledsoe. And really, like daily, he posts incredible videos of these orbs that he sees around his property. It's amazing stuff. What else? Oh, feel free to join the conversation that is trickling along on our Discord channel. That is, if you go to themeltpodcast.com, on the top menu, you will see a link directly to that. In the near future, we have a merch store that's going to go live, and you can get your sexy melt attire there in the new fall colors. Actually, it would be the spring colors, wouldn't it? I'm in the wrong season altogether. What else? Yes, still threatening to leave all mainstream social media and just keep it to Telegram and Discord. Haven't made the leap yet, but still thinking about it. Is there anything else to cover? Is that it?
We really appreciate you.
Oh, yes,
Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of the Melt podcast community. And we look forward to future episodes.
Yes. Great stuff. As we mentioned before, Ryan Musgrave Evans is going to be another fantastic interview. It'll be the next episode. So stay tuned. Take care, all.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
If you've liked what you've heard and would like to contribute to The Melt, there are a few ways that you can do that. The most tangible would be financially. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and there you will find ways that you can contribute for as little as $3 a month. This will give you access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. Contributing financially will also help make The Melt better, pay the bills, and help to make this podcast a full-time endeavor that I can fully devote my time to and provide you with more content. Another way of contributing would be to go to wherever it is that you subscribe to The Melt and give it a favorable review or rating, and this will help it to reach more people. You can also spread the word to friends and family via social media, email, or word of mouth. And lastly, if none of those options are readily available or appealing to you, simply send your positive thoughts and intentions. In an interconnected and quantumly entangled multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.